Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. What I thought we'd start by doing is if you wanted to introduce yourself, where you're working at the moment, what your background is, and the topic we chose today.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me along.
Okay.
My name's Sarah Kachansky. I'm the CEO of FinTech Wales. I've been working in the fintech industry for, I think it's close to 15 years now. So
yeah, you definitely don't look old enough for that.
But very kind, thank you. But my background is all in fintech. But my background is being an analyst, being a consultant, understanding the market and helping my clients and customers understand what products and services they should be launching into the fintech market to meet unmet needs. So that's me. FinTech Wales is a membership organisation. Unsurprisingly, we are based in Wales.
Love it.
Our mission is to empower fintechs and financial services companies to grow, to scale and to thrive in Wales.
Yeah.
We do that across 4 strategic pillars. We do that across skills. We are a facilitator. We convene skills working group and help our members talk to local education authorities about the skills that are missing and how we can close any gaps there.
Yeah.
We do work across our ecosystem, which is largely bringing people together. We host an awful lot of events. They're always incredibly popular, helping people network, helping people find those services and gaps and products that they may be missing otherwise.
Yeah.
Then we have our community and our amplification. So our amplification is we exist as a sort of marketing agency, if you like. Sorry, marketing department, not agency,
Ooh.
for some of our smaller members. So if they're very, very small and just starting out, we'll help them amplify what it is they're doing and get their message across. And then finally, our 4th pillar is funding, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we don't have any funding ourselves. We are a not-for-profit, as I said, membership organisation. But what we do is work with our members and with various different sources of funding and investment to help them get the capital they need to succeed.
Love it. So yes, like you said, we're talking about funding today. So obviously a lot of your expertise is going to be around fintech, and you know a lot now about the funding in Wales, which is great, but actually it crosses over a lot into generally technology businesses, doesn't it? And maybe companies in the southwest or companies that can harness some of the funding options in Wales as well. So I guess, what is the scene at the moment when it comes to technology funding? Do you want to kind of update us on what we're looking at?
So the funding landscape globally has been quite tricky for startups in the last few years. We had an incredible high in sort of 2020, 2021 when companies were receiving lots and lots of funding.
Yes.
Valuations very high. That was true of all sorts of businesses, but particularly technology and fintech businesses. And then, as the economic climate shifted, we started to see that funding drop off quite dramatically, particularly over the last couple of years. If you look at the statistics, the UK, this is fintech specific, but I think we can use it as kind of like a bit of a proxy.
Yeah.
The UK in the first half of 2024, UK fintech received $2 billion worth of funding, but that was down 37% on H2 2023.
No
so
way.
There has been quite a significant dip. It does go up and down, and that's just one measure. That's Innovate Finance's measure. But the general point I would make is that the funding picture has looked very mixed over the last few years. You've seen some large technology companies make quite significant layoffs. The CEO of Klarna, which is a really, really big fintech, he said basically, I'm going to lay off, an awful lot of staff and replace them with AI, which is another topic of conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is they're making these layoffs and these cuts because the funding isn't as easily accessible.
Fine.
And that's for a number of reasons. One, it was very arguably in a bubble. Valuations got way too high.
Yeah.
That was driven by very, very low interest rates because it made a lot more sense to invest your money than save your money. Now, as the bubble sort of burst, it would be fair to say, I think, and interest rates have come back up again, it's become less appealing to invest lots of money when, to put it in very, very simple terms, you could save it instead.
Yeah.
And it's less risky.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. That said, things are starting to pick back up a bit. Like they're slowly coming back across the board. We've seen some new funding, some new funds being announced. So Outward VC announced one this week, which is a particularly active in the fintech space. But they got a significant chunk of that funding from the British Business Bank, and that's to invest in businesses, technology businesses, fintech businesses in the United Kingdom. So I would say that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying it was really, really good, and then it went really, really bad, and now we're just sort of evening out.
Yeah, Amazing. Okay. So for companies listening, we'll get onto some tips in a minute or some ways that, they can access some funding that will really help their businesses. But I know you mentioned when we were planning this podcast that Wales are doing some things differently to kind of help their businesses flourish and access funding that maybe isn't as obvious. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that Wales does, I mean, every country does things their own way, but I can talk about, because that's where I'm based and because I know the landscape
very
best,
well.
there's a few different things I can talk about. So one is the Development Bank of Wales, and for companies that have a significant presence in Wales, there are some options available there. So they have their Angels Invest Wales scheme, which is where the Development Bank will passively invest if you can get a pre-approved angel syndicate to invest up to a certain amount. So an angel syndicate will register with the Development Bank of Wales. You, as a company that wants to raise angel funding, goes to one of those syndicates and say, you agree how much you want to get. Then the Development Bank of Wales says, okay, they're on an approved list, we'll match it, here you go.
Wow.
And so that's a really nice way of, that's early stage, obviously very early stage companies, but a really nice way of them doubling the access to the capital they need to get started. There's also the Seed Technology Fund, the Development Bank of Wales runs, that invests slightly larger amounts. And again, the Development Bank will invest a certain amount, and it's usually required that it be matched by another investor of some sort. So these are funding options that are available, as I said, to companies that have a significant presence in Wales, but they don't by no means have to be fintech companies. Certainly, as I said, the Seed Technology Fund is much broader than that. Then you've got one that's based, if you're sort of based in southeast Wales. And then there's the Cardiff Capital Region's Innovation Investment Capital Fund.
Yes.
Which is a very long term.
How many times have you had to learn that?
Honestly, I should know it better than I do, but it's lots and lots of words. But what that is a £50 billion fund that's available to businesses in South East Wales. It offers investments of between £2 and £7 million. Again, it's not specific to fintech. It's an innovation fund, so it's available for innovative companies. So again, that's for companies based in South East Wales, but with both the Development Bank and with CCR, they don't have to be exclusively in Wales. So if you are this side of the bridge, but you've got a significant team in Wales, then those funding options are available to you.
Very interesting, okay.
And then the third one that's probably worth mentioning is the British Business Bank's Investment Fund for Wales, and that's £130 million. I won't go into all the details of that because there's lots of different ways you can access that fund. But there's definitely a large pot of money that is available for businesses that are looking to raise capital. And that the British Business Bank's fund is some of its equity investment, but they also, as an organisation, do debt and loans. So there's other options for businesses that are looking to grow and to get the capital they need to expand and to scale. And that's one thing I would say is I think in the technology industry and certainly in the fintech industry, sometimes we can get hung up on venture capital funding. There are lots of other options out there, as I've just listed three. And that's before we start talking about private equity and venture debt. So it's a case of making sure you've got your eyes open to what options there are available.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does sound like there are so many options. So even though, starting a company can be so daunting, and like you said, the venture capitalism, like you could think, how am I going to raise this? How am I going to find it? But actually, when the government are supporting you, or banks or what have you are supporting you, that is really positive and really exciting. So that's actually led me to ask, I pretty much know the answer, but I'm curious to see how, and if there's any anecdotes. FinTech Wales, so how do you guys go about supporting companies with accessing this information? Like, what's your go-to? And I'll leave it there.
So, I mean, we do it in a number of ways. As I said, like we don't have our own funding to give to people much, but what we do is we focus on those 4 pillars. So the funding is the one pillar, but the other pillars very much feed into it. So we help people with accessing the information they need through running events for our community, and we get guest speakers along to those. So some of whom, for example, could be one of those 3 Welsh funds I mentioned. They'll come along, they'll talk about what it is they do. We've convened round tables with the Development Bank of Wales before, where we're a facilitator. We bring all our members along, we speak to the Dev Bank, they bring the relevant people along, and then people get to ask questions and say, well, is this appropriate for me, or is this the right road for me to go down, or what do I need to do that's specific to this fund? So we're a facilitator in that, and as I said, we're a facilitator in the creating the ecosystem and convening the ecosystem and bringing that community together by putting on this range of events. We also bring venture capitalists up from London. One of the issues is that people think, I gave that UK funding figure earlier. An awful lot of that is London, and even more of it is England. Yeah. So there's a range of reasons for that, but one is definitely visibility. So if you are a tech founder or a fintech founder or anybody in that space looking to raise venture capital funding at the moment, you have to spend a lot of time going to London, which is not the end of the world. It's only an hour and 50 minutes down the road or on the train. But what we try and do is bring more of the people who have the money to Wales so they can see what a flourishing ecosystem we have. At one point that's probably worth mentioning is that our events are open to anybody within our ecosystem. So I keep using the word ecosystem. That is largely fintechs, but also we do get a lot of other technology companies come along, just because some of the services and products are useful to everybody. And it's useful for people to connect with each other and, as founders, to talk about their experiences and cry on each other's shoulders.
Absolutely. Like the network that you guys create and foster, nurture is significant, and I think that's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast, because obviously our network is the technology space. It can be specific to fintech, but we're broader technology as well. So I thought there'd definitely be an audience there that are in this point of being interested into what funds are available to them. If they're Southwest based, are there things in Wales they can access? Because I'll just go back to that. You mentioned earlier, you don't have to be based in Wales to access some of the Welsh funding. So what did you mean by that? Like, how could a Southwest company access it?
So it depends on the individual fund and their own requirements. First of all, we as FinTech Wales are not geographic specific. Okay. So if anybody wants to join us as a member, and we've got members who are based in London, for example, but they have a strong connection to Wales.
I was going to say, what would be the benefit?
It's a lot of it is coming to our events, is getting to know the network there. There are other benefits that you can imagine being in Wales versus London, and the obvious one is cost. So there are definitely benefits. So we as a membership organisation are only mind that people want to give and contribute to the Welsh fintech and financial services industry. If they happen to be based somewhere else, that doesn't bother us. For the various funds, I would advise anybody interested to go away and look at the details. Each of them do have their own websites that set it out quite clearly. But for example, I know that there are options for you to just set up so some of them will require you to be headquartered in Wales, but you can then still have a significant team in Bristol. Some of them don't require you necessarily to be headquartered in Wales, but the other way around, you can be headquartered in Bristol, but with a significant team in South Wales or in Wales. So as I said, I would advise everybody to go and look up, the details. But there are definitely options for people who are in the Southwest if they're looking to expand their teams. We've got a huge talent pool in South Wales. It's a very complementary talent pool. It's not very far to travel. Providing, generally it's not very far to travel. As I said, so definitely explore those options.
Amazing. Interested to know, what are some of the trends in investment at the moment?
So I can take this from two angles.
Okay.
So the first angle I can talk about perhaps is the stages at which companies are raising money.
Yeah.
So, I said it was quite easy for people to raise money 4 or 5 years ago. It is more difficult now.
Yeah.
And what investors are doing is they're going to almost either end of the spectrum.
Okay.
So either the very, very early stage companies which need less funding, they can put a smaller amount in.
Yeah.
And it's still a risk.
So they're just funding like an idea.
Yeah. And the angels, angels are quite active as well across the United Kingdom. That's another thing I would advise anybody who's listening or watching who wants to start business to do, is explore your local angel network.
Okay.
Because angels really like to give back to where they're from historically. So either to give back to like their industry, or there's a huge trend of women angels investing in women-led or founded businesses.
I can see that, yeah,
and that trend goes across the board. So the very early stage investment is definitely picking up, as it is at the later stage. We need some very, very large funding rounds. One that's probably worth mentioning, or people will have heard of, is Monzo raising hundreds of millions of pounds. It's the gap in the middle, and there's still a significant gap in the middle for companies that we would say are scaling. And that's where we still need more specialised funding to come in, and perhaps more support, like the stuff that FinTech Wales does, but on a much broader scale for companies in that gap in the middle.
I'm not sure if you'll know the answer to this, but what you said there about there being a gap between early stage funding and then later stage, like larger amounts. Why is there a gap? Is it less attractive to fund at that stage?
I mean, so there are many, many answers to that question. I don't have the definitive answer to that question, and every investor and every capital provider will have their own answer as to where they decide to invest and why.
Yeah.
The very, very simple answer is that often the scaling part is the most difficult part.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying any of it's easy, but if you are starting a business and you've got a brilliant idea, a good team and a compelling idea, then getting enough money to sort of get that going and getting a minimum viable product is doable. And in the same, part of the story, if you're at the end where you are, up and running, you've got quite a few customers, you're generating revenue, again, you're kind of got a proven business.
Yeah.
In the middle, when you're trying to get between having a brilliant product and having, replicable revenue and significant customers, that's the difficult bit of any business. And so the general consensus would be that often the funding is more difficult to get in that bit because you need more money, but you're still very high risk.
You're still burning through the money.
And the burning through the money is a really great point.
Yeah.
So, you go back to 2020, 2021, the burn rates of some of these companies, these huge tech companies, were unbelievable because the money just kept coming. Yeah. Now it's not coming. A lot of those companies are having to think very clearly and very hard about how they operate their businesses. And so revenue generating is one thing, but profitable and sustainable are also two things that investors are hugely interested in right now.
So that makes me think, like, even finding the funds is one thing, but actually funding that's already there, and still there since 2020, 2021, has it become harder to access those funds now? Like the application stage for that, is it more rigorous? Because you said there that they're burning through cash now, they've got to get smart about how they spend the investment.
So I think I would say that, so we would say if you want to go to like VC terms, we'd say there's still plenty of dry powder. And that means that funds are sitting on money that they have not invested yet. Oh. So there is still plenty of what we would call dry powder out there. But exactly to your point, the trend that we have seen is that investors are being a lot more cautious about where they're investing.
Got you.
Because again, that kind of the kind of insistence and interest in a profitable business rather than maybe historically it was just grow as quickly as possible. Now it's grow as quickly as possible, make sure you're profitable whilst you're doing it. Yeah. And that's a very difficult balance to strike.
Oh, there we go. So bringing it back to what you guys do in Wales, FinTech Wales, it'd be really nice to understand what's Wales doing, like what are the interesting points in Wales, where is the funding going?
So Wales has a lot of everything. I would say that historically we have been known for our insurance and our insurtech sectors.
Yes.
So Admiral is a household brand here in the United Kingdom. It employs thousands and thousands of people in South Wales. And because it's been in South Wales for a while, what's happened is you've got I would call them like the alumni that come out of Admiral. So they're brilliant people with brilliant ideas who then go on to found other businesses in the insurance and insurtech businesses in Wales. Yeah. And one of the really nice things about Wales and that community and that ecosystem I keep talking about is that people want to give back. And so some people might think it would be easier to move to, say, London to start a business, but people in Wales often want to stay in Wales. It's where their family is. It's where their homes are. Yeah. So we've got quite a lot of insurtech and insurance businesses in Wales. We have got, in terms of where the funding's going, obviously AI is a huge topic, and that's across the board. Again, any technology company. We've just had one of our members has just raised £500,000, Mena.ai. That was literally announced today.
Wow.
And so they're using artificial intelligence to help small business owners run their businesses.
Brilliant. Very interested in that because the nature of what we do. Will they be consulting on AI solutions to other businesses? How does that work?
No, they've got their own tool.
Okay, right. Yeah. So an AI tool.
AI tool. So I don't know the full details of it. So again, I wouldn't want to talk about it and
plugged
get it
them
wrong.
so we can go away. We can research them. It's really exciting.
So that's so AI is a topic of huge conversation across any investors. But we're starting to see that in Wales as well. We had a brilliant female-founded company that's a modern accountancy platform. called Mazuma. They raised a multi-million pound round in January of this year. That money came from the Cardiff Capital Region, or some of that money came from the Cardiff Capital Region. And then we've got, there's so many. There's a company called Prosper, which is founded by a gentleman called Ricky Knox, who also founded Tandem Bank, which is one of the big neobanks. He's got lots of connections to Wales, so he came back to Wales to start his next company. They raised some funding from DevBank, and so Prosper is a wealth management solution.
Yes.
Then we've got Valadiant, which is it's a compliance solution, so anti-money laundering, all that kind of helping companies stay on top of their regulatory burden. Nice. They raised some funding from the Development Bank. So we've got a little bit of everything. We've got a lot of some things, but the fintech scene is really, really thriving in Wales. And I think, the historical perception has been of it being very insurance heavy, and that's now changing. The one other thing is, I touched on it when I mentioned Ricky Knox, but the neobanks, so I'm sure a lot of your listeners will have heard of Monzo, Starling. Both Monzo and Starling have really significant bases in Wales. In fact, I believe Cardiff is Starling's largest base.
Wow.
They employ a lot of people doing a huge different range of roles. And then, of course, Monzo just raised a significant amount of money this year as well, as we already mentioned. So they're going to be investing some of that in building out their businesses in Wales.
That's fantastic. And, just from a recruiter's point of view, and everyone that has a job, that's really exciting for the talent pool, because these massive businesses have got the bases there and they need the staff. So it's really feeding that ecosystem of talent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say that, from your perspective, it's music to your ears that these people are raising funding, because a lot of what they're doing is spending it to expand, and that means people.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, you want people to get as much funding as possible.
We love it. But also, we actually have kind of candidates listening, and hiring managers, what have you. So everyone needs a job at some point. So it's really good to hear that there's that growing need for tech and fintech talent in Wales. And we have a big Southwest following, but actually if they could then find work in Wales and vice versa, that's really exciting.
I think there is a lot of that, I think, certainly since the toll went off the bridge, which is a very niche comment for people who don't know the southeast of Wales or the southwest of England. But I think there's a lot of synergies between the southwest and the southeast of Wales. I think if you look at the work the Western Gateway is doing as an organisation and as an initiative to try and bring everybody together and make sure everybody kind of builds and thrives off each other's success. I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's easy to travel between the southwest of England and the southeast of Wales. There's a lot of connections there. There's a lot of things that we have in common. So I would encourage any business that's looking to expand to look at South Wales. Come and see what we have.
Love that. Thank you. So what I think we'll finish on is, what is the future of funding looking like?
It's certainly looking brighter than it was. As I mentioned, we've got a couple of new funds, VC funds that have been launched recently, which shows optimism, right? You wouldn't be launching a new fund if you didn't think you'd have anybody to invest in. Certainly in Wales, we've seen investment through 2023 and the first half of 2024 really pick up compared to 2022. So that's really heartening from my perspective, and for the broader tech industry. I think there has been a period of settling down, of recalibration, and I think there's a better understanding of what's required between all parties now. So I think it will pick up again. We will see a more steady flow. It's just not going to reach the heights it did, back in the heady days of 2020, and that's not a problem, because arguably things were getting out of control.
It was quite skewed.
It was very skewed. So that's not a controversial opinion to say there was a bubble at burst, but perhaps it needed to burst, and perhaps now we're on a more even footing. And the future's definitely looking brighter.
Amazing. Thank you. It's so nice to see you, Sarah. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all right.